People who had COVID-19 or know someone who did. How bad was it? My mom had COVID. Started as a fever, then quickly worsened. Within days she was in the hospital on oxygen. Seriously thought she was going to die. My dad has COVID. He has zero symptoms and probably had it 4 days before the results. My dad is diabetic with kidney failure and multiple other health issues. Why my mother, who's mostly healthy, reacted so badly compared to my dad is uttering bewildering. Edit. For the love of God, if you have symptoms of COVID-19, please stay home. Don't ignore the signs. If you don't have symptoms, wear a mask and gloves whenever you leave your home. Please be careful and safe. Sometimes people who are healthy and have strong immune systems develop a complication to infection called cytokine storm, where the body's immune system basically pulls out all the stops and starts attacking the lungs. Not saying that's for sure what happened to your mother, but it has happened with a lot of COVID patients. 30-year-old friend had it. He was so sick that his roommates were almost afraid to check on him in his room because they thought they'd find him dead. Getting out of bed to go to the bathroom took all of his strength. He's fine now, but it took a few weeks for his lungs to feel even remotely normal. My mother-in-law had something like this in January, before it was a thing, but we swear she had it. She would call us for help, and me or my wife would go over, we live 5 minutes away, and help her get something. She said she was out of breath walking to her bathroom, and then out of breath walking back after using it. It was wild. We all want to get antibody tests as soon as they are available. My grandmother got it in her late 80s and in a nursing home. She probably weighs 70 pounds and can barely sit up on the best of days. She had a fever for a week and a mild cough, then recovered. We are shocked. She's so weak that when the home told us she had it, we all thought she had no chance of beating it. Weird how it can kill strong healthy people, but somehow spare her. It's a crapshoot. Age and health can weight it one way or the other, but there's really no absolute guarantee in either direction for any specific person as to how it's going to go. 3 friends, 2 of which had families. One was living alone, so they all decided to live with each of the alone guys' house so their families didn't have to suffer the illness, and if one of them got badly sick the less sick guys could take care of him. They got a bad fever and a dry cough, and one of them lost his sense of taste for a little while afterwards, but they came out of it fine otherwise. Edit. Have families, not had. Glad to hear they were looking out for each other. As someone who lives alone, my worst fear is being in terrible condition and no one is there, or worse, my stillborn parents decide to risk their health and stay with me. My friend is in Italy. He got it and was sick/bedridden for a week, while his girlfriend had just some aches. Both his parents, his grandparents and his uncle died, all within a week. Edit. To lessen the horror I will add that his aunt had it too, but recovered. Sorry, it's a rough one for a Monday. Oh my god. I can't even imagine the pain. I had it. I was basically bedridden for 2 weeks, barely doing anything except sleeping. Even then, I kept waking up at night a sweaty mess. I spread it to all my family members, but they showed extremely minor symptoms. Pretty weird stuff. To answer questions, when I had COVID-19, I developed hives. The onset of COVID-19 was extremely sudden, developing hives and a fever of 102 within an hour. I was also very confused and tired all the time. I didn't go outside much prior to getting COVID-19. I did make a full recovery within 2 weeks. I did not require hospital care. Same. I had fever, chills, bed-soaking sweats, horrible muscle aches, headaches, overwhelming fatigue, and diarrhea. I did not have shortness of breath or a cough. No one else in my house, including my husband, kids, and elderly mother, got anything other than a minor sniffle. My cousin ended up on a respirator in ICU. She finally got off the respirator, but passed from a blood clot the next day. My uncle died from it. He died at his house while in self-quarantine. Didn't know he died until after he didn't call or answer his phone after 2 days. Sorry for your loss. Just heard this morning that a friend of mine died last night. Her partner called 911 when she took a turn for the worse, and in the time it took the EMTs to get there she'd already passed. It was that quick. She'd been tested, knew she was positive. She was told to stay at home unless her symptoms got worse. She felt sick, but not rushed to the hospital sick until last night. I'm trying to comfort myself knowing she'd rather die in her own bed than in a hospital surrounded by strangers. I lost my faith to it, and I don't know which option would have been worse. In the end I suppose it doesn't matter. I'm so sorry. My condolences to him. COVID doesn't discriminate at all. I'm 32 and it was the sickest I have ever been. 2 weeks of fever over 101, bad cough that lasted almost a month, shortness of breath where, if I walked more than a few steps I would end up doubled over gasping for air. It was pretty bad, but at least I'm all better now. All the edits, damn that blew up in the few hours I was asleep. 1. Thank you to everyone for everything. 2. My general condition before this was good. No underlying conditions. I was in really good shape. In the gym mostly every day. 3. Yeah, it really sucked. I was never really in fear though, because I caught it early enough that it wasn't really hyped that much. I think it was March 3rd that I went to the hospital. 4. I work as an Uber driver on the weekends, so I'm guessing that's how I caught it. 5. I was on an inhaler for a while afterwards. I tried working out about 3 weeks after I initially got sick. That was a joke. I literally ended up on my back wheezing and hacking 2 minutes into the workout. 6. I'm pretty much fully recovered now. The only effects I'm still feeling are just from taking so much time off from working out. 7. I think that's the gist of most of the questions. If you have a burning one that I didn't answer, I'm sorry. Feel free to ask me again. One more super important edit. Everything I have seen and read about this is that it affects everyone differently. Please don't read what I didn't think that it's great advice or anything like that. I would hate for someone to get worse because they listen to my dumber on Reddit. Please listen to your doctors. Adam is a beast. Glad you're better, bro. My mum went from minor tickling throat to being taken away in an ambulance by people in hazmat 3 days later unable to breathe. 2 weeks later she died. No major health issues. She was sedated as soon as she went into hospital and on a ventilator for the duration. Eventually her organs started failing and there was nothing else they could do other than turn the ventilator off and let her go. Edit. Thank you for all the awards and messages etc. I wasn't expecting it. I know in most cases something like this is difficult to talk about, but because of the current global situation it all seems unreal. I don't mind talking about this and answering questions. Obviously it is such a weird virus, so my mum's experience may be different to others. It kind of feels like she is lost at sea. She went away and we couldn't see her. Now we are just waiting for the knock on the door with her ashes and someone saying I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. I've lost a parent too. Different circumstances however. If you would like to talk I'm here. My friend was tested positive. He is quarantined at home with a little fever, muscle pain and a light cough. He is getting better every day it seems. I hope he continues to recover. My sister, who was 47 with no underlying health issues, passed away from COVID-19. It took 10 days. She was in the hospital for the last 3. The scary part is she was making a recovery. Her lungs at day 7 were operating at 83%, and after 2 days in the hospital she had got them to 95%. In 29 hours it was a complete 180. I was able to text with her. She kept saying she was having a really tough time, but didn't go into much detail. My brother-in-law and 2 nephews also had it. He mistakenly thought his COVID was just from a good gym workout, as his body was just really sore. My nephew, age 13, puked one night and had a fever for a few hours. The youngest, age 7, never had any symptoms and felt fine. All tested positive. That's just horrific. I'm so sorry for you and your family. Dad got infected after going in and out of the hospital for his 4th brain surgery because the doctors keep messing up. After testing positive, the hospital sent him home, so he infected mom also. After passing, for some reason, they sent his body home. But nobody can touch it because of the possibility of getting infected. After dad's passing, mom went to the hospital to get tested. She already knew. She just wanted treatment, but was sent home. She collapsed while walking to her car. They admitted her, but only gave her 4th told her she was positive, then sent her home again. It's been rough. Edit. I'm in California for school and currently not with my parents. The funeral home sent it to my parents' house. I'm unclear of the reasons why, since I'm not there and my parents does not speak English. It must have been a mistake. They've taken the body back. For everyone that's worried, thank you. I've gotten some family members over there to help my mother out. As for suing the hospital, I don't think our family is mentally or financially ready for that right now. My father had to get 4 surgeries because the first time the doctors told us surgery went well, but had to go back in since the sutures erupted. We asked what happened. That's when they told us there were complications during the first surgery. Then he stayed in the hospital alone for a few days and somehow the area got infected. So there goes surgery number 3. Then the 4th surgery is probably when he got infected with COVID-19. They then released him after the 4th surgery. I do not feel comfortable discussing where my parents are located, since it is a small town and everybody knows each other. Thank you for your condolences. Geez mate, that's bloody rough. Thoughts are with ya. Sorry for your loss. IQ nurse checking in. I just got cleared to go back to work tomorrow after testing positive a couple weeks ago. How bad was it compared to the COVID patients I've treated? Nothing. I didn't even have a fever or shortness of breath. Our IQ patients are so sick. All the things you've heard about on the news. Hypoxia, blood clots, multi-system organ failure. We've had many people in their 30s and 40s with no pre-existing conditions who've ended up just as sick as the 80-year-olds, and many of them haven't had good outcomes. Sadly, I work at a major hospital where we routinely get the sickest patients transferred to us from smaller hospitals, so I realize I'm seeing the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, but it is scary. My symptoms were all so minor and non-specific that I blew them off or chalked them up to other things: spring allergies, dry hospital air, sleeping poorly on my chesty mattress, working overtime for several days until I realized I'd completely, profoundly lost my sense of smell and taste. That's when I knew I had to get tested. Lo and behold, it was positive. It sucked, but I'm very grateful I wasn't any sicker than I was, and especially that I have health insurance and work at a place that paid for my covered specific sick leave as well as having paid sick leave in general. I know there are so many other people out there who don't have such a safety net, and it seems very unfair. I've been hearing a lot about the hidden cardiac symptoms. Do you mind me asking how the perception of the disease in your IQ has changed since the beginning of the pandemic as we learn more about it? Thank you for the amazing work you do, and I'm glad you are feeling well. So, my dad tested positive, and right now for him is just like a bad flu. Because the test results came back 3 days later, we continue to act normally as a family, so my mom and I probably have it too. We are almost 100% positive that my mom also has it, because she is losing her sense of smell and has been having similar symptoms like my dad. There is a big chance I have it too, but I have not presented any symptoms so far. I hope everything will be fine for you all. Currently in the hospital with is in my early 20s. I rode it out for a week until I could breathe. Sickest I've ever been, and never had to hospitalize before now. Going home tomorrow though, so that's good. I'm recovering now. Do you have any suspicion as to how you caught it? How careful were you in trying to avoid it? PPE, washing hands, distancing etc. Glad you're okay. My sister was an extremely healthy non-smoker who works at a prominent hospital. She was exposed to one of the hospital's first corona patients weeks and weeks ago, when naivety was very much a thing and precaution wasn't taken very seriously. The patient tested negative, but then positive after her exposure. She didn't take the same precautions because he tested negative when he was in fact positive. She certainly contracted the virus despite testing negative twice. She was ungodly sick, and even weeks and weeks later she's still using an inhaler and has a lasting cough and perhaps lung inflammation and damage. She's 31. Just to confirm though, she's still alive, right? You have me worried with all the was. I'm so sorry for her pain. This sounds so hard. I'm currently recovering. I'm a 30-year-old male with no health issues, so maybe that's the reason, but for me, it was like a mild cold. Felt crummy from Tuesday night to Thursday. Started feeling better Friday. Now I just have a bit of a cough and weird headaches. The testing process was a pain though. First one was inconclusive, so I had to get a doctor's note and go get another test. Be careful. That was me at the start of my symptoms, before it came back and knocked me on my completely for 2 months. The stories of the early false recovery are real, so take it super easy and don't overexert yourself for a week. Deleted. I'm so sorry. That's the most terrifying thing about this virus to me. It's just so random who gets hit hard. I've had 4 people in my life pass from it so far. 1. Former coworker and friend was one of the first people in the US to die from it. He was 34 years old and only had childhood asthma. 2. A great friend and collaborator I had just stayed with a month before. He was 39 years old and no pre-existing conditions. 3. My best friend's mother who was like a second mother to me. She was 63 years old with no pre-existing conditions. 4. My grandmother who was in a nursing home. She was 90 and was relatively healthy for her age. All passed within 2 weeks of showing symptoms. With the exception of my grandma, they all were home for the first week then were admitted to the hospital as their conditions worsened. Edit. Thank you for the outpouring of love and support. In a time where the normalcy of grieving and saying a final goodbye has been flipped on its head, your words mean a lot. If you have a specific question, feel free to DM or post and I will answer. I'm so sorry you lost so many loved ones. I hope you find the strength to recover. Stay safe. Deleted. I'm so sorry. I'm a MD in New York City at a designated COVID-19 center. 15% of pregnant patients here have COVID-19. Of those positive patients, 87% are completely asymptomatic. We just admitted another one half an hour ago. She looks fine. It's good that so many don't get real sick, but it's scary because they are likely walking around spreading it. My best friend had it and was non-stop coughing with fevers to 103.6 and every flu-like symptom you could imagine for about 3 weeks with a slow recovery. Said it was horrible. Terrible cough when I was FaceTiming him. One of my co-residents had it and felt like hell for about 2 weeks. Cough, fever, body aches. 2 family friends in their 60s has it and were laid out at home for about 5 weeks. One was kinda stuck in bed and the other weakly supported the 2 until they improved on their own. The common thing I hear is that it's like a horrible fever that just stays and stays and stays. You keep thinking you turned the curve, but the next day you're still sick until it runs its course. The really sick patients in the hospital it was really horrible for a long time. Things have slowed down thanks to social distancing and all the precautionary measures. I'm worried about going backwards though, because the people in my area are walking around without masks or their nose out. Everybody has a reason for going out or not wearing a mask. The virus does not care what your reason is. It does not care. Edit. Thanks for the cool awards. I like the AskReddit dude/dudette. What do I do with snus new coins? I see the really sick ones. It's a 2 to 3 week ride of hell until organ failure eventually gets them. It's frustrating because we do everything we can and then some, but they just die. Occasionally 1 or 2 make it. I'd say you have about a %25 chance of coming off the vent. Just rough estimate. My trainer at the gym had it. She is an ordinarily healthy woman in her 40s and very fit. She had high fever. It was hard to breathe, exhaustion and brutal muscle aches. She found it hard to walk across her bedroom. She lost her sense of smell also. Suspected neurological symptoms too, memory problems and trouble finding words. 3 weeks after her quarantine ended, she still feels like she is out of breath very easily. I saw her loading groceries into her car and it was hard for her. She is still having memory problems. She recovered at home, no hospital. This is the first in the thread that sounds like my experience. Mid 40s. Day 1 felt like a cold. Day 2, raging headache. Day 3, raging headache and loss of smell and taste. They came back slowly and dulled, just in time for breathing to get difficult. Just laying down felt like I couldn't get a full breath, still with a headache. So, worst hangover ever with a side of asthma. Oh, and lingering neuro issues. Aphasia and poor memory and can't concentrate. At the end of week 2 I tried to have a call with my client. During the call, they texted my boss to say I wasn't ready to work yet and am constantly out of breath. And if I breathe too deep my lungs will catch and just exhale rapidly, which makes me more out of breath and want to take a deep breath, and it just happens in a loop until I'm exhausted. And this is a month after I was cleared by my local Department of Health. Never had a fever higher than 99 and only for one night. For a full month after this chiz started you couldn't even get a test if you didn't have a fever and a few other symptoms. So frustrating. 2 friends both lost a parent each. So pretty bad. That sucks bad. Hope your friends' families are holding tight. What you all are going through is just god awful. My condolences, for what it's worth, friend. Deleted. Can't imagine how that feels. Makes me really appreciate how strong you gotta be to keep going. Thank you. My roommate got sick about 6 weeks ago. It wasn't until a couple weeks ago that he got his sense of smell back. He was barely able to get out of bed for weeks and would have terrible coughing fits. By the way, I should mention that he's 22 and a collegiate athlete. He was probably in about as good of shape as a person can be in before he got sick. My girlfriend got sick too. It wasn't quite as bad for her, but one day her fever registered at 104 and I was freaking out. You're the asymptomatic carrier. I'm upvoting this post so people can remember how serious COVID-19 really is and how it's completely different for everyone, and there's absolutely no way to know how it will affect anyone. Just unpredictable. I tested positive today for COVID. I'm a 23F. In good health and it's been horrible for me. Cough, chest pains to the point that simply breathing is almost unbearable. Fever, chills, I could go on. Not to mention the swab itself is a nasty test. Goes up your nose and down the sinus cavity where they rub the swab up and down for 10 seconds. I now know why this kills people. I'm ducking terrified of this test and that alone keeps me vigilant. Friend had minor symptoms, but the virus triggered an aneurysm. Now he'll miss 6 months of work getting his full speech and writing skills back. Edited to add, apparently this needs to be spelled out, even though I haven't run into this problem anywhere else when discussing COVID-19. Missing work is bad. Why? Because my friend, like most people, needs a paycheck for rent, food and medical care. I know this will shock those of you who are either independently wealthy or 12 years old. He also just wants to get back to work, so life can be normal again. Doubly so because this was a new job after a lengthy time out of work after layoffs. His speech has greatly improved, which is how I know all this, because he talks to me on the phone, but writing is so-so. He is otherwise just fine, though still understandably angry that it was a cluster getting a damn COVID test. I posted here, so people would be aware that some patients are having aneurysms. COVID is also producing blood clots in some patients, triggering strokes. These are subsets of health impacts from a virus that virologists, epidemiologists, and others are still learning about. The word friend, in particular, should be a clue that I value my friend not as a supposed cog in the wheel of injustice that is capitalism, but because I love him. I hope this helps those of you who found my original post too difficult to understand. Edited again to make small clarification that aneurysms and strokes are both happening. For more info on either, please consult someone who has more training than my degree in English. Thanks for the edit. Having lived in America for 8 years, after growing up in a country with a really amazing social net, I completely understood what losing 6 months of the ability to work meant. In America, you literally have to work pretty much every day for the rest of your life, or you're ducked. I knew 6 people with it. 2 died, the other 4 got better, but it definitely wasn't a pleasant experience for them. 6 people. If you don't mind me asking, where do you live? I'm in Cali right now, and I don't know a single person who has gotten it. My aunt died from it last week. I would say bad. My condolences to you and your loved ones. I have known several that have contracted it, but 2 coworkers died from it on the same day last week, so pretty bad. May I ask what kind of job industry you're in? A friend had it, he's okay now, but it was scary for a bit. He said it was pretty much like a bad case of the flu until one night he spiked a high fever and started having problems breathing. It was like 1 hour he was fine and the next he had to be hospitalized. He ended up on a ventilator for almost a week. Thankfully he's doing okay now, and he's recovering at home. His family also ended up sick, but they didn't need to be hospitalized. This virus is hitting everyone differently. For some it's like an average bout of the flu. Some people have severe symptoms, while others have minor and varying symptoms. Some people are asymptomatic. Some people need to be put on ventilators, and unfortunately we are losing a lot of people as well. I wouldn't wish this uncertainty on anyone. 1 minute your loved one is fine, just feeling a little under the weather. The next minute they might need to be hospitalized. You never know if they are going to bounce back or not. The virus doesn't care how old or how generally healthy you are, it will kick your butt if it wants to. My father died of COVID-19. Yes, he was in a nursing home, and he was a Vietnam veteran. I know he is finally at peace. He was a sniper. He passed away on Easter Sunday at about 6 AM Eastern Time for USA. It took only 3 days. He spiked a temperature. From what I was told he had a false negative. My father was not well. Basically, he tried to drink himself out of his nightmares. Thinking of Dad. Thank you for your service. I'm truly sorry for your loss. I wish you and your family well and peace through this difficult time. I was never tested, but from all of the symptoms I had, and from talking to 2 separate doctors multiple times, it's safe to say that I had coronavirus. Ever since I was a little kid, I was sick with bronchitis, pneumonia, and other illnesses, but this one makes the others look like a walk in the park. I have no idea where or how I got infected, but from mid-March I started to feel a little tickle in my throat followed by occasional coughing. I assumed it was just allergies, but once I started to have a fever, I knew something was up. I was too scared to go out, so I used an app to talk to a doctor, and that's when she said that I most likely had coronavirus. At that point I felt incredibly nervous/scared because I live with my parents and I was afraid of getting them sick. I started to self-isolate in my bedroom, but things quickly got worse. The fevers became more frequent, and at one point my temperature was regularly 104°F. I was generally in control when dealing with these fevers, but sometimes they were so bad that I was delirious. At its worst, I forgot where I was, and I wasn't making sense when I talked to either of my parents. The worst of it was being unable to breathe properly and dealing with 20-30 minute long coughing fits. What sucked about the coughing was that I wasn't hacking up phlegm, and they were generally very dry coughs. My energy was drained, and I couldn't do anything without feeling out of breath or having to deal with a coughing fit. Everything took a lot of effort to do, and sometimes it'd have to take 5 to 10 minutes to build myself up towards doing what I needed to do. It doesn't compare to having a ventilator, but a $20 fan I bought from Amazon a few years back helped me feel a little better. Whenever I was coughing up a storm, it was very difficult to get a breath of air in, so I turned up the fan to its maximum level and aimed it towards my face. At one point I was left unable to use the bathroom because I was too weak to walk to the toilet. I'm a bit ashamed that it got to this point, but I had to use diapers and eventually moved on to using a bucket. It was incredibly humiliating to get to this point, but all I cared about was trying to be as comfortable as possible without being left winded or with more coughing. It was disgusting pooping/peeing in a diaper/bucket, but it was better than coughing up a storm and not knowing if I'd be able to breathe again. On top of being sick and being worried that I was going to die, I was worried that it'd get my parents sick. They surprised me and kept caring for me despite me coughing and most likely being contagious. They'd regularly come into my room with masks/gloves and did everything that they could do to make sure that I was taken care of/comfortable. It helped me realize that my parents love me much more than I previously thought, and that makes me want to be there for them as much as I can. Thankfully, nothing ever happened to them, and they're one of the reasons why I eventually got better/felt cared for during a difficult moment in my life. As if being sick wasn't bad enough, it also triggered panic attacks, so that was really difficult for me. The panic attacks are nothing in comparison to being breathless and feeling weak, but it didn't make things easy for me at all. Things were so bad that I thought I was going to die, but it got to the point where I wrote up a last will and testament. I also filmed myself saying some words because there were nights where I didn't know if I'd wake up the next day. On these nights I contemplated going to the hospital, but it was complicated. I live in a heavily hit area and I heard stories of people going to the hospital and not leaving or not being sick and getting sick thanks to visiting a hospital. Not only that, I had no idea how I'd even get to a hospital. I have no car. Taxis would probably refuse to transport a visibly sick coronavirus patient. I was too weak for public transportation, and an ambulance would be incredibly expensive. I realize that thinking about money/debt in a life or death situation is ridiculous, but that's where my mind went while I was in the middle of this. Fortunately, I never had to go to the hospital because my parents were somehow able to help calm me down enough to the point where I could go back to my room and try to relax. You'd think someone dealing with this illness would be sleeping as much as possible, but it was hard to get comfortable, so I was awake for lengthy periods of time. For the most part, the few times I was able to fall asleep was because the fevers more or less knocked me out. Other than that, it just stay in one position in my room while watching a lot of movies/TV shows. Everything was horrible to deal with, but the worst of it was not being able to breathe properly for minutes at a time. I have no idea what helped me out the most, and chances are that I'll never find out, but my parents tried home remedies because we were desperate. We already had conventional medicine that was prescribed by my doctor, but it still didn't prevent every bad thing from happening. They bought me a humidifier to breathe in eucalyptus oil. They gave me pretty rough back massages, and they used VapoRub to see if that would help. I realize many of you reading this will think it's stupid to try home remedies in the face of an illness such as this one, but we were desperate. Now that I've more or less been better for around a month or so, I've had a lot to think about what I went through. Every once in a while, new details of what I went through come back to me, and I try to jot them down in my journal. I recognize that this is a historical event, so I've been trying to write in my journal as much as possible. I'd like to be able to publish it someday, but I don't know if that'll end up happening. One of the things that's been on my mind is why was I able to get better when so many other people succumbed to this disease? I've heard stories of people my age, late 20s, that are much healthier, or even athletes dying, and it leaves me feeling like chiz. I don't know if it's survivor's guilt or something, but it's strange to think that someone that's in much better shape than me wasn't able to pull through. I'm thankful that I'm alive, but it's something that I think about on a fairly regular basis. At this point I feel as if I'm just rambling on, but all I know is that this illness is not just the flu, or whatever bullshit idiots are calling it these days. This chiz is serious, and dealing with it was one of the worst experiences of my life. There was just a lot of really bad stuff to deal with, and it's too much to type it all up here. I have forgotten some things that I went through, but I know I'll remember the general experience for the rest of my life. Thank you for writing this, and especially the diapers part, because that can help a lot of people. I'm so glad you made it through. I know a person in their 50s who had it. Sore throat, difficulty breathing/tightness in the chest, and fever up to 102.5 It can seem pretty mild and then go downhill fast because of the breathing problems. Deleted. A guy I went to school with died from it. He was 37. So, pretty bad. I know of a guy who was 35 and died from it. Dude is only in his late 20s/early 30s, and he said it was the sickest he's been in his life. He said it was super duper flu, and then he felt better, and then bam, wave 2. He never needed to be hospitalized, but he said it sucked big time. It also freaked out everyone who was around him. Edit, upvote the people who have it, or who have had loved ones die. This guy lived, but this is no joke. Our 28 years old daughter is an RN. They didn't have adequate PPE, and she was infected from a patient. Hospitalized for 5 days, pumped full of steroids, horrible coughing, and scared the shot out of her. We couldn't even visit. She's out and back to work watching patients die weekly, while Moron Republicans scream that it's no big deal and Mr. Orange Bonespa says it magically going away. Ducking insane. They should spend some time helping these people. Glad she recovered. Brave girl. I wish her and you the best. I had it. 29 years old. Fever, chills, and body aches for 3 days. Used Tylenol and fluids. Fiance tested positive as well. Completely asymptomatic. I do have family friends who weren't so fortunate though, and required time in the hospital. One of my coworkers tested positive. She recently tested positive again, and has been out of work for roughly a month and a half now. She wasn't hospitalized, and she's doing better, but still fighting it pretty hard. How long between her 2 positive tests? Friend of mine, 23, had it and passed it to his roommate, also 23, and said roommate ended up dying from it. This thing isn't a joke. No matter what age you are, you aren't invincible. Please be considerate to others. To date, they all died. Holding out hope for a 5th person. Edit, it's actually 6 altogether, 2 on the mend. I'm so sorry for your lose up. I hope you're taking care of yourself through it. Sending lots of positive energy well love you way. Well, they died. So I think that's pretty bad. Same for us. 34-year-old friend, a groomsman in our wedding. Sorry for your loss man, this sucks. A very good friend's son got it. He is 17. My friend had the same exact symptoms. They were sick for weeks. Finally tests became available because anyone who wants a test can get a test, you know. He tested positive and she tested negative twice. There is so much we don't know. Edit, the son got the virus from his dad, the ex-husband of my friend. We believe they got it after going to a Utah Jazz basketball game in New York City. The other responses are likely incorrect. The tests have a very high false negative rate at 20-30%. This is why they test again if you're negative. A guy on my street was hospitalized with it and tested negative 4 times before finally giving 3 positives. You can't take a negative as fact, as they test the throat or nose. If the virus is in the lungs, but not a detectable amount in the mouth, the tests can fail. Edit, they can swab deep in your throat and into your lungs if they want to get the test more accurate, but this normally only happens if you're hospitalized, since it's quite uncomfortable. Chest CTs can actually be very accurate due to the fairly unique appearance of COVID-19. You see aggressive ground glass opacities in the lungs. This is basically fuzzy bits on the scan, which can be seen rarely in other illness, but when paired with the symptom profile can give you a pretty accurate diagnosis, 95% minus 99% depending on who's reading the scan and their experience. False positives can occur if the test is contaminated, like if the worker is sick, or if you have recovered. The test can even find an activated virus DNA resulting in a positive. You're actually usually contagious following any viral infection for up to a month, though. Norovirus is 3 weeks of infectiousness potentially following a 2-day infection. It is rarer to infect somebody during this time, however. Antibody tests are potentially worse accuracy, especially the rapid tests, and you should ideally be tested twice at a minimum to be sure. The accuracy varies depending on brand, and some brands lie about their accuracy. Some out of Hangzhou had claimed 99.5% sensitivity, but were found to be 86% accurate. This makes them 28x worse than what they claim. It got pretty bad for about 5 days. Cough, fever, chill/hot flashes, dizziness, and body aches. Overly tired and worn down. Weirdest thing was not being able to taste anything. Never did lose my sense of smell. Gradually got better after the bad days. Unfortunately my boyfriend got it as well, but we quarantined and got through it together. I consider myself fortunate because the person I got it from is still in the hospital on oxygen. It's scary how it can affect so many people so differently. Stay safe everyone. I had a similar experience of having taste entirely gone for a week, but still having some sense of smell. It was odd. The main difference was I was hit really bad for a week with bad breathing difficulty. Probably should have been hospitalized from how bad it got, and the chest pain. But your brain doesn't make amazing decisions when it's depleted of oxygen, so I just let the cards fall. I feel lucky that I got better and now really wish that young people would take this seriously. I got sick at my job, essential worker doing construction inspections for life-threatening excavation failures. I was mid-20s, strong as an ox, and this thing absolutely wiped me out. I thought I was going to die, and I'm seriously worried about what damage they are going to find it did to me later. I get pissed that people are protesting for their right to die in Ma when I didn't get the option to stay safe at home. Boils my blood. My mother-in-law got in March. She was hospitalized for 2 weeks. No one could visit her, and she couldn't even talk on the phone due to her shortness of breath. She's not very skilled at texting either, so we could only get occasional updates from the nurse. 2 months later, and she's still on oxygen at home and just this week was discharged from home nursing and home PT. It's possible she will be on oxygen for some time to come as her lungs are so damaged. A colleague had it, mid-30s, no medical problems, non-smoker. She said the chest pain was the worst part. She had a fever and cough for something like 10 days, but never the shortness of breath, just significant chest pain with every breath. Sounds awful. Immunocompromised but got over it in 48 hours of fever, muscle aches and headache, just like a cold. My husband got it and dragged a dry cough around for weeks and still struggles with cardio and has the healthy one. We're in our 30s. Seems quite random. May I ask if you were on a biologic? The folks at r/Crohn's disease have been hoping that biologics defend against lung damage by limiting the immune response. Would be good to hear it from a real person. My fiance worked on the COVID floor of a hospital in New York City for a few weeks. For most of 1 week she was pretty run down, had fever, low energy, aches, basically the flu. She tested negative for the antibodies, but I have a feeling that was a false negative. When was the antibody test conducted? It can take time for the antibodies to be detectable. Also yeah, false negatives are common, especially in the rapid antibody tests. Many had sensitivity and specificity below 90%, making them useless except for maybe home use. You can't say I got a positive, so I can go do whatever I want, because false positives are common. A coworker lost her husband, her mother, an aunt and an uncle to it. April was a rough month for her. They were all older. She's about 60 I think herself, and had prior health issues. This is beyond the level of trauma that anyone should ever have to experience. I lost my fiancé, he was 43. It's still a shock, and to see so many people just going back to normal life is so very strange and surreal. But I suppose I understand it. It's like living in the Twilight Zone. This is so horrifying. I'm so sorry. My condolences to her and her family. My aunt, 46, caught it at the meat plant she works at and passed to my uncle, 74, who unfortunately passed away from it. She recovered. The meat packing and processing industry in the US has been hit really hard. They aren't set up for social distancing. Then the Uster inspectors got it. 100 of them tested positive, but if we stop the inspections, it puts the food supply in jeopardy. I don't think you can get a consistent answer on this. Symptoms range from non-existent to death. Some people get rocked and have to go to the ER. For some it feels no worse than the flu. That's actually pretty common with diseases. Typhoid Mary was completely asymptomatic. I think that's why a post like this is good. People need to see what a wide range of impacts this has and know that there's no pattern consistent enough to make good predictions about how it will affect any one individual. My best friend currently has been diagnosed and I have yet to hear back from her. She lives an hour 27 minutes away and it's not easy to just go check on or help her. I have very high risk with my medical problems. Praying for her though. She's a strong person and a precious friend. I know she's got to be struggling right now. I will try and post update when I know more on her condition. I'm sorry, I know my post doesn't exactly do much help in the way of describing what it's like. But when I do know more into her well-being I can provide that. God bless anyone out there struggling with this virus. My heart goes out to you all. That's a very specific amount of time she lives away from you. Manduck this thread RN. This thread recommended me to wear a face mask. I'm sad for all these posters, but the thread is a good thing. The media doesn't bring the almost 90k deaths into personal space. This uncomfortable to read thread does help us face it. Thanks to all the posters that shared their story. I know someone who died. He was in his 60s and caught it very bad. He was on a ventilator and in an induced coma. They honestly thought he was improving, but one night his condition worsened dramatically and he died the next morning. He was sick for about a month with it. My girlfriend and I both had it. We live in Brooklyn and I used to, a guest room in the lower level of my apartment. Very lovely couple from the UK came to stay in early March, just as things were getting pretty wild. The last morning of their stay, he woke up with a fever and cough. 24 hours later, I was clearly sick, coughing, flu, shortness of breath, fever of 101. It was really bad that night, and then the symptoms kinda chilled out, but persisted with the cough, mild fever and general aches for about another 2 weeks. 72 hours after initial symptoms I tested positive. Girlfriend was sick in a totally different way. She had weird headaches for nearly 2 weeks straight, but almost nothing else other than mild cough. Weirdest part was that both of us almost completely lost sense of smell plus taste. I ate half a raw onion to confirm it. Was as tangy as an apple. Taste/smell only fully returned after about 6 weeks. Thankful that it wasn't worse. The raw onion part gives me a clear idea of just how bad the loss of taste was. Yikes. A little late, but hope this helps someone. I'm on dialysis, 30 years old. A friend of mine in dialysis got it. She's in her 60s. She was in the ICU for a little less than a month. Ventilator, the whole deal. Family was told to prepare for the worst. About 2 weeks ago she was discharged to a rehab facility. At the beginning she was so weak, could barely hold her head up. She uses a wheelchair and had to be transferred from her wheelchair to dialysis chair because she couldn't even stand up, was on oxygen 24/7. This week she is standing on her own to transfer chairs, no longer needs oxygen 24/7. It was very scary and I thought we would lose her for sure, but she managed to pull through. A girl I graduated high school with has it. She's 27, no underlying conditions. She's been in a coma for 2 weeks. Updated, she parred. I'm a frontline RN. It can truly be as bad as they are talking about. This is not just a bad flu. I have worked during bad flu seasons and never seen anything like this. It is very unusual how it affects everyone so differently. Many people can recover at home, but there really are a lot of people who need to be admitted and require respiratory support and fever control. The fevers tend to run very high for a few, 104 plus, and acetaminophen doesn't help, but not everyone gets fevers and some that do respond to acetaminophen. Not everyone who catch this is going to get extremely sick, but they can transmit it to someone who will. I have seen more deaths during this personally than in the last 4 years combined. It has been very sad. My coworker's entire family got it. He said it was basically like a cold with bad muscle aches. After reading so many other comments I had a knee-jerk reaction that you were gonna say the whole family was gone. Glad they got out of it lightly. My coworker father-in-law died. My mill was in bed for almost 3 weeks. My best friend wife and mother both had it really bad. A 61-year-old nurse my mom works with got it. She was overweight and had previously been diagnosed with asthma, although it was under control, not causing many problems for her. 1 week after showing symptoms she was put on a ventilator. 3 weeks later she died. My friend's son had it. He was sick for about a week and no one else in the house caught it. He's doing well now. Everyone else is probably asymptomatic. My nephew is in the Navy aboard a ship and tested positive after falling ill. He has been moved off the boat to a shoreside hospital in Guam and may be medically discharged from service due to lung damage. He is 20 years old. I'm sorry to hear that, but glad he's alive. Do you mind me asking if he was on the US Theodore Roosevelt? First one, he's dead. Died alone. 4 days on oxygen and hospice care, and then he died. Second, her recovery has taken a few months with a few near fatal scares. She's officially COVID free but weak still. I'm so sorry for your loss. My baba died alone after a stroke a few weeks ago. No one was allowed to be in the hospital with her because of the COVID restrictions. It makes the loss more painful because they are our people and they didn't deserve to die alone. I have it right now. Symptoms started on Sunday last week. That morning I thought I had allergies. I basically had the sniffles with a bit of a sore throat, maybe a cough here and there. That evening I had a headache and the chills, but no fever, and some muscle soreness. Monday I called out of work. Symptoms were more of same. My PCP denied a test, but my essential job demanded I get tested, and I couldn't get an appointment until Tuesday morning. Monday I couldn't sit at my desk to work from home because my legs hurt so bad. Sitting, standing, pacing, laying down, nothing once comfortable. Still no fever. The highest my temp got was 99.6. Tuesday I got a rapid test at an urgent care facility, and within 5 hours it came back positive. Tuesday night my sense of smell was on the way out. By Wednesday it was fully gone, and along with it, my sense of taste. Wednesday I ended up in the ER because the leg pain was so bad. They took blood for some tests, nothing hit, so I was given a shot of morphine and sent on my way. I'm on day 8 now, finally getting some energy back and minimal pain. I still can't taste anything. Bread tastes like a flavorless sponge. Aside from a stray cough on Sunday or Monday of last week which were more from a throat tickle, I didn't have the major symptoms. Never went above that 99.6, so I technically never had a fever, no cough all week, and no shortness of breath. But I still have a stuffy nose and sore throat. I'm over being sick. Edit. Also, I've been exhausted all week. I've slept more than I ever have while sick. Normally I'm hyped up like a chihuahua on crack, so this thing really took me down. Buddy's mom had it. She was bedridden with a fever and only a strong desire to sleep for about a week before it got into her lungs. The doctor said to get her to a hospital in case it gets worse, and it eventually got so bad they had to have her on a ventilator at 100%. There must be a setting of how much it is breathing for you. I suppose because he kept talking about it being at like 80%, then they had to turn it to 100% when she started to get bad. I guess people trying to breathe on their own can mess up the process or something, so they had to knock her out and give her a paralytic for almost a full week while on the ventilator. They couldn't get some drug called remdesivir or something, and there was a 48-hour stretch where they weren't sure whether or not she was going to die, but she did eventually make it. Relapsed once but only for about 6 hours, and then it finally started to permanently fade. That was about 2 weeks ago when she was considered coronavirus free. She has been in rehabilitation for about a month while she was learning to breathe on her own again, then move muscles and walk. Then she was able to have brief conversations on the phone and feed herself, and now she can walk across the room, so they think it should only be maybe another week or so until she can go home. She is in her early 60s and in pretty good shape. It really ducks up some people. She works at Kroger, and I would only got the virus from work, because otherwise she had been doing everything properly with quarantining and whatnot. I'm glad she survived it, and I truly hope, now that she has been through it, she will be immune to it long enough for it to be incorporated into the future vaccines. I know you didn't ask, but I just wanted to let you know that the percentage they were referring to on the ventilator is the percentage of oxygen they were getting. I'm an IQ nurse. Room air is 21%. 024 reference. I'm glad your friend's mom is doing well. I know one person who tested positive late February early March. He said his wife was sick the week before but never got tested. He isolated from his wife and kids in the house for 14 days and the kids never got sick. He said it was a bad flu for about a week. 2 relatives were hospitalized. Both were having serious trouble breathing. One was on respirator for a week and was sent home where they were isolated for a further 2 weeks from their own family. The other was sedated in ICU and put on a ventilator. No family could visit whilst they were sedated for 12 days. Still recovering a month later. My fianc had it for what I believe was almost 2 weeks before his fever got so high that I demanded he go to the ER, where they told him he had pneumonia. He never had any other symptoms. No cough, no loss of taste or smell. Just the fever. After 4 days in the hospital being bored and complaining about the lack of good hospital food, he became increasingly short of breath, and after being maximumed out on room air was put on a ventilator, which after 20 days, he never woke up from. The official yet came back 2 days before his body shut down saying he was COVID positive. That was April 8th. I'm still in shock. He had no comorbidities. Thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I can't imagine what he went through nor what you're going through. But I'm incredibly thankful for people like you that continue to spread awareness and help others understand how serious this is. See, the only people answering this question will probably be people who had bad experiences, new people who had the bad experience, etc. There are probably plenty of people who will see this who had it, or new people who had, but they had no idea that they had it. I'm a full supporter of all the stay-at-home stuff, and am following closely the CDC guidelines, but the horror stories are way less scary the more that we realize that the virus has tons and tons of asymptomatic cases. That being said, condolences to those who were affected in any way. The fact that the virus has tons and tons of asymptomatic cases is much scarier to me. That's what's going to keep it going for months and months. Those people can unknowingly spread it, and because there's no way to know how it affects any one person, the people they spread it to can have a similar asymptomatic experience, or die in a few days, or suffer for a long time and recover, or have mild symptoms and recover, or any other combination. There's no way to know. Other diseases that kill quicker and that don't have as many asymptomatic carriers are much easier to eliminate. My cousins-in-laws had it. The mother was sick, but not bad. The father tested positive, but had no symptoms. They are in their 60s. These variations make me wonder how much we know about viruses in general, not just coronavirus. I'm an ICU travel nurse in Philly, so granted I have a different perspective. The ICU I'm in currently has not had a single COVID patient survive past ICU admission. Once they get intubated, it's all over. The patient I had last week had worn a BiPAP mask on maximum settings for 3 days straight before finally getting intubated and just recently dying. Before getting intubated, he was breathing with a rate in the 50s. Try breathing 50 times a minute and see how quickly you get tired, refusing to let me take the mask off to wet his mouth, unable to speak or get out of bed. It's horrible. It's even worse knowing that family can't be there with them at the end, and we ourselves are supposed to limit time in their rooms because there is such limited PPE, and we have to decrease our risk of exposure as much as possible. That doesn't stop us from being with them though. There was a feature story about a nurse from New York. It's the same as what you said. She was sad no one ever leaves the ICU alive. Once they go in, they don't come out. One patient wanted to FaceTime her granddaughter before she died, and the nurse helped her FaceTime her daughter. My son, 8, got sick first. We thought it was the flu, but he's never been sick like that. Fever and a dry, but extremely heavy cough for days. His pediatrician tested him for COVID-19, but the test came back negative. We now know that was a false negative. My daughter, 5, got sick 3 to 4 days later. Slight cough, mild fever for a day, and then she was fine. I, 37, got sick a few days after that. I felt tired and itchy and a little sick to my stomach one day, and the next it was like I got hit by a truck. I had a fever of 102 after Tylenol for 3 days. I had no appetite for a week. I lost my sense of smell and it still hasn't come back. I got sick at the beginning of April. The cough was the worst. At first it was like bronchitis, but it just kept getting worse. I couldn't take a full breath. I came very close to going to the but I never fully hit the wall, so to speak, so I talked to my doc and medicated at home. I couldn't complete a full sentence without running out of breath, and for a few days I just sat in a chair and tried to breathe while sucking down Dayquil/cough syrup and Mucinex. I finally stopped coughing this week. This is the sickest I've ever been. My husband, 40, never got sick. My coworker and her husband had it. She was very sick, but ultimately recovered and was fine. Her husband was hospitalized for a week with pneumonia. Luckily he also recovered. Their 2 kids were asymptomatic. Haven't tested positive, but am planning on getting the antibody test when I get the chance. I know a lot of people have shown similar symptoms before the virus was considered to be in the area, so I'm wondering if what I had wasn't it. Keep in mind I get sick maybe once every 2 years and have never missed a day of university, even through all this. I was sick most of November, but only had a low-grade fever for a couple days. Everyone told me to go to a clinic after a few days, and I didn't. Kept going to class, kept playing in band, lovely, I know. Kept working both my jobs, didn't slow down for a second and just pretended like I wasn't sick, because if I did I could miss important notes or an exam, or get fired from one or both jobs for calling out. Took all of the drugs, so on and so forth. But it never got better. 3 weeks into it, I felt faint while driving and couldn't catch my breath for the life of me. It felt like I was suffocating. Called my mom, and while she told me to go to the I went to the university clinic. After class, of course, organic chemical isn't something to miss, even if you're half dead. They ran a chest x-ray, and it was pneumonia, and my heart rate was so elevated at the time that I couldn't receive any sort of breathing treatment. They hit it with antibiotics, but I was still having problems breathing on and off for a few weeks after, so who knows if they actually worked or not. Turns out quite a few of my classmates had similar symptoms, so I may have been responsible for them or vice versa. They kept coming to class too, because that's just what you do. Even after they gave me a note to miss a week and a half of work, band, and school to recover, I kept going to class through it all, because I was terrified of the makeup process of not only lecture classes but also labs. Looking back, I know it was extremely irresponsible of me, but I also didn't really have a choice. Most things, in American society anyways, not sure about other countries, aren't built to let people be sick. I interacted with countless classmates, customers, and other people over this entire time. No mask, no nothing. Who knows how many people I gave it to, or how many people have lost their lives from something I may have either directly or indirectly given them. I feel so ridiculously guilty over it. So, I do community theater. It's common to tough it out when you're sick and perform anyway. If you aren't hospitalized, you're on stage. It's not unheard of to have buckets backstage for sick actors to nip off, puke, and go back on stage. Something hit the cast back in December. One kid was super sick for 2 weeks, high fever, awful cough, and still not well for another 2 to 3. Several parents had to arrange rides for their kids because they were too weak/sick to drive. The tests for flu were varied but mostly negative. We had actors in a crowded house, 4 days a week for 3 weeks. We don't have anyone who's taken antibody tests. But I wonder. My state is a hub for international travel. A friend of mine, who is a prominent cartoonist, got it and drew/wrote a diary about it. I don't know anyone personally that's had it, but my dine-in restaurant job is opening back up this week and has been trying to get all the employees to come back in and work, but I feel like I shouldn't do work. First, I had to move back in with my parents, both mid-60s, so I would be absolutely devastated if I passed on the virus to them. Second, I don't trust the average person in Arizona to follow proper guidelines and take the right precautions. I really enjoyed the job, and I was on the fence 50/50 as I was gonna go back, but reading these comments have helped put my mind at ease and realize that it's not worth it. I think I need to get out of the food industry. I respect your decision to keep your parents safe. Wishing the best for you and them. Hope you find another job without so much public contact. Best regards, and happy cake day. In the hospital for 2 days with a relatively mild case. Low oxygen. Still tire more easily than before, and have tested positive for antibodies. Waiting for more info about possible organ damage, liver, and heart, but don't seem to have any symptoms. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.